and all the distinguished ladies and gentlemen who have joined this virtual interaction. My greetings to all of you. My apologies, we cannot start on time due to some very pressing meetings, but I do hope to be able to make up during the course of the next few minutes and then some interaction with all of you. In fact, I'm delighted that ICRIER takes this initiative to have a international conference every year and discuss about what's happening in the G20. And for this year, you've chosen a very, very appropriate subject, the global economic coordination in the age of the pandemic. Truly something very contemporary. All nations are grappling with it and the need of the hour. As you're all aware, we'll be a part of the Troika starting very soon from 1st of December. For the next 3 years, India will also become a part of the Troika. While Indonesia will chair the next year, we are chairing the year after. So this 3-year period will have an important role to play at the G20. And for the first time ever, the whole world will be collecting in New Delhi for the G20 conference somewhere in the latter half of 2023. I must say that Prime Minister Modi took the bold decision to host the G20 in Delhi, and in the midst of the pandemic. In fact, all the preparations are going on. We had prepared ourselves to do it next year itself, but since Indonesia has taken the chairship next year, our turn will come in 23. But I can assure you that the preparations are in full swing. The work that's going on particularly at Pragati Maidan in New Delhi is outstanding. You'll have a world-class convention center coming in there. And very soon, the Honorable Prime Minister will also be visiting that complex. And there'll be some part of it which will be started, which will be dedicated to the nation. Friends, today the entire world understands that in this interconnected and interdependent world, no one is safe until everyone is safe. And towards that end, a greater degree of global economic coordination is the need of the hour. We are all equally responsible to make that happen. It's imperative to tackle this pandemic on the one hand, to ensure vaccination for everybody, rich or poor, all countries, all citizens of the world, and also serious research on finding a cure for COVID-19. India has, of course, shown out in its performance of tackling the pandemic smartly, including the very strict lockdown in the first phase, where we prepared ourselves. We converted this crisis into an opportunity, brought in huge amount of new elements to our economic policy through the Atmanirbhar Bharat packages. For example, testing we've ramped up from 2,500 to nearly 3 million per day.
Absolutely.
PPEs we made zero. We are now the world's second largest manufacturer of PPEs. Our ICU bed ramp up, our oxygen ramp up, the ramp up of training of skilled manpower on a variety of fronts. India has shown the way. Certain things are inevitable because we are seeing it in Kerala, where we first thought we've been able to manage the COVID very well. But now we realize that there is really no management of COVID. Some things have to run their course. And towards that end, I think the leadership that Prime Minister Modi gave through the pandemic, the way we were able to ramp up all our facilities, including a thing like oxygen 10 times, from 7 to 900 tons per day, India went up to 9,000 tons of liquid medical oxygen, a feat unparalleled in the world, with decisions being taken on the go, on the run. The fact that economic activity was not hampered and we continued to support the economy, protect livelihoods, not a single starvation death in a developing country like India. Almost $30 billion worth of food grain distributed for 15 months free of charge to 800 million of our brothers and sisters was truly a phenomenal thought implemented on the ground, and we continue to give free food grains, which we'll do right up to Diwali, up to November, to ensure that nobody in the country is deprived of adequate foodstuffs. I'm sharing all of this with you is because India, in a way, has become a role model of managing the pandemic. Simultaneously, with over 920 million vaccines having been administered, we are very close to a billion mark now. And by the end of the month, or maybe middle of next month, we would have actually given every willing adult the first dose of an indigenously produced vaccine. And the speed at which we are producing, possibly 300 million vaccines being produced per month now, you will have a situation where we'll soon be able to support the lesser developed countries, the island nations, those who are really deprived of vaccination with indigenously manufactured vaccines, and truly going for supporting the rest of the world in the spirit in which India has always worked. That is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We believe the world is one family. And our Vaccine Maitri program, the way we supported the world with medicines, the way we supported the world with oxygen after our own requirement had come down post June. In all respects, I think the world today recognizes that India is a trusted partner, a true friend in need, and the relations that Prime Minister Modi has built with world leaders over the last 7.5 years are truly holding us in good stead now, when we wanted supply chains of vaccine, raw material, and other products to be unhindered. I still recall world leaders saying that when the world needed India's support, we went out of the way under Prime Minister Modi's leadership. We didn't hesitate one bit to support the rest of the world. And when we needed their support for the supply lines on vaccines, they were most forthcoming. And they have ensured unlimited supplies of our raw material and other products, so that today we would be amongst the world's largest vaccine producers. I would also like to draw your attention to the other research that's going on, both on vaccines and on a cure. So we'll have the world's first nasal vaccine. We'll have the world's first DNA vaccine. I'm told trials have started different parts of the world on a cure for COVID. So really the world is working as one, supporting each other. India has also offered our vaccine technology to other parts of the world on very liberal terms. And on similar basis, we had made an effort that WTO also accepts a temporary TRIPS waiver for vaccines and other essential medicines. And we continue to pursue that initiative at the WTO level also. Ladies and gentlemen, it is imperative on the G20 today to look beyond the interests of its own members and emerge as a genuine force multiplier for good work. And Prime Minister Modi has, throughout the pandemic, displayed immense sensitivity to the needs of the world, to the people of the world. He has not viewed the pandemic from a narrow prism of a national crisis, but looked at it from the world situation and how India cannot remain isolated in this, as I said earlier, world where all our stakeholders, big or small, rich or poor, whether it's medicines or vaccines, whether it's professional healthcare professionals, technicians or other services, all through COVID-19, India, through its ingenuity and innovation, has showed that we care for the world. And I think our success story would be incomplete if we didn't talk of our fantastic digital technical manpower who has held us in good stead. They have worked towards social inclusion, good governance, whether it is Aadhaar or it is COVID. I think all the various digital initiatives of the last several years have today supported India to tackle the pandemic extremely well. In fact, I cannot even imagine how you and I and all of us would have gone through the strict lockdown, but for digital technologies helping us in our work, keeping the economy running, keeping our trains running to move freight, to move migrant labor, ensuring export commitments are met, helping work from home so that service level agreements are all honored. And what we did in the last 18 months has not gone unnoticed. The world realizes we met every service level commitment. Our services exports were almost 97% of 1920 during the COVID year. And mind you, without travel, without hospitality, tourism, without that. So in a way, our services sector grew on the IT side. Similarly, on exports, while last year we were down to about 94%, which is, I think, quite honorable, considering the severe lockdown and the COVID pressures, we still did 94% of merchandise exports. But look at the current year, first 6 months, an all-time high of $197 billion. India has never done this high an export figure in the first 6 months anytime in the past. We are well poised to achieve our targets. In fact, normally in a usual year, we would do about 45% of the annual target in the first 6 months, which would mean about $180 billion. Still, we had thought we'll push and go for 190 so that we can try and exceed our final year target. But we managed with 197 billion on the good side. Services are also progressing well, even with the shortfall in tourism and travel. My own sense is the years ahead of us are going to see a race to the top between merchandise goods and services. Because services is fast catching up. They've grown phenomenally in the last 20 years. And particularly in the IT sector. We are proposing to promote tourism in a big way going forward in the post-pandemic world. So all of this really is reflecting a resilient economy, a bounce back. While we have to be cautious, COVID is not yet over. But on the macro level, the Prime Minister Modi's vision of one earth, one health is clearly the guiding light, the vision for all countries to follow. And that is what I'm going to promote in the G20 discussions. In fact, we are also running the world's largest healthcare program, Ayushman Bharat. No other country in the world has been able to provide 500 million people free healthcare like India has done. I think in a sense we have shown to the world that we can cooperate along with competition. Competition, collaboration, and cooperation can coexist. And that is the path on which India is working. The Supply Chain Resilience Initiative launched with Australia and Japan in September 20 is also underway. I'm engaged with FTA dialogues or comprehensive economic dialogues with the EU, UK, UAE, Australia, all across the world. There is a buzz about India. It's for us in different aspects, different fields, whether it's economists or business persons. All of us have to now take that opportunity and take it to the next level. Ladies and gentlemen, what we need is faith in ourselves, in our abilities. The clarion call for becoming Atmanirbhar given by Prime Minister Modi has truly transformed the way, the mindset of every Indian. And Atmanirbhar Bharat is not about closing India's doors to engagement with the world. It's actually opening the doors wider, because where we are competitive, we want leadership position in world trade. Where we think we need to import, we want liberal market access within India and reciprocated by other countries for our products, so that we can expand trade on both sides and truly become an important stakeholder in global supply chains, a trusted partner, and help in the recovery of the world, the economic recovery, the social recovery, and the health recovery of the world in the post-pandemic era. Of course, the pandemic has remodeled several G20 priorities, and we must keep rethinking, reimagining, recreating our own processes, our own thinking to be an important stakeholder in the new world order. For the next few years, developing countries like ours will be leading the organization. Indonesia next year, followed by us. It's a unique opportunity for all of us to inject a more inclusive and equitable agenda at the G20. By acting in tandem in this decade of action, the G20 will play a pivotal role to achieve all these sustainable development goals. I think all the G20 countries have a leadership role to play towards meeting the SDGs. The reform of multilateral system, the WTO world order, is also a priority before the G20 countries, and India is playing an important role in working towards resolving some of these conflicts. We believe we have to strengthen global institutions like the World Bank, the WTO, the UNFCCC, and all of us will have to work towards a better future of these organizations, more trust, more fair working, more integrity in their own processes. We shall all work towards this common agenda, building synergies with like-minded partner countries to bring out a strong future agenda for all the G20 countries, be it climate action, be it food security, be it energy sufficiency, be it transparent, honest, rules-based trading systems in the world. I believe all of us will have to have a centric approach, more central in our thinking. Economic progress will have to be employment centric, policies will have to be people centric, cooperation will have to be community centric. And when all of us decide that we have to work for the people, for the planet, and for the collective prosperity of the world and the planet, I think there will be no power on earth which can stop India from achieving its rightful role in the Committee of Nations and the G20 nations coming together to provide leadership to improve the lives of the people of the entire world. My best wishes to all of you and to this very important international conference that you have organized. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Honorable Minister. It's a real pleasure to listen to you, and I think you have captured immensely and very well both the challenges that our country went through during these COVID times and the way that we have risen to those challenges in a way that is completely unprecedented. And I think it is an example for the rest of the world, in fact, that many of the areas where we are excelling in the digital stack, in the management of COVID, in our healthcare systems and practices is becoming a truly memorable and really path-breaking way of doing it. I can assure you personally from my own experience of having traveled around to the US and other places, what the progress we are making in areas like that are truly compelling. And when you throw out numbers like, the fact that we have 3 million people being vaccinated every day, there is no country that can imagine how that is even remotely humanly possible, particularly given our population size and how it's done. Please, Piyush ji.
Pramodji, not 3 million, about 10 million getting vaccinated every
Yes.
day. 10 million.
I know we hit that record. We definitely hit that record, and now it's 10 million every day, and it's rising up. And 900 million vaccines, 920 million vaccines have been provided across the world, which is an incredible number to even contemplate for any other country who are still struggling at very low levels of vaccination. And this applies to all the developed world. If you will allow us, we have a few questions. Agar if we may be allowed to ask a few questions,
Sure.
it would be we
Sure.
would be really appreciative of that. If I may start, G, and then we have some questions coming in from the audience. As we think about climate change, there is a commitment from the developed world to fund a very significant part of the expenses that will be required. And yet, India has had to do its own share, carry its own burden, and that funding hasn't come through yet. I would love to hear your responses to that, because that to me suggests more lip service perhaps from the developed world than is perhaps necessary, and that will not work. And therefore, as the Sherpa, as our leader, how do you think we should try and handle those issues? Because these are such critical issues and defining moments for all of us. Let me start
You
with
are
that.
absolutely right, Pramodji. We are on every single occasion raising this on every platform. We'll have the COP26 in Glasgow very soon. This is going to be one of the issues under discussion. The fact that the developed world has let down the world. In fact, India is amongst the only G20 country which has not only met but exceeded our INDCs or NDCs. We give a report every 2 years based on the UNFCCC expectation, which many countries even now don't. So I think it's imperative on the polluter pays principle. Those who are
G.
responsible for the problem in the first place have to bear their share of burden. Probably a disproportionately high share of burden is what is called for. And we are taking it up very actively. And I do think that there are some signals of receiving technology, climate finance, concessional finance, long tenor finance, or grants. But we have to still hear a lot more from the developed world. And I endorse what you said.
Yes, absolutely. Deepak, we have a number of questions. Can we go to those?
Yes. Do you want me to read it out, or
Please, could you? I'm not
Okay. I'm going with from the bottom. So this is Honorable Minister. As the G20 Sherpa, you are uniquely and benefiting the list, given that you have laid several ministries aligned to the Sherpa track issue. Which are the areas where our strength lies and where India can lead by example?
Well, of course, climate change was one issue where we have clearly led by example. But also, when we look at rules based trading systems or transparency in the way we work, India is a shining example. Here, everything is transparent. You don't have any hidden subsidies, any hidden support to trade or to commerce or to exports. And I think that transparency and honesty in our systems is another area which certain geographies certainly need to emulate. I think on renewable energy, India has been a big success story which the world talks about. On our energy efficiency, and I say this because on every international engagement, my counterparts will always talk about the LED program that India has led from the front. And thanks to India, now the world is adopting LEDs. And when we are always calculating the impact on climate change and reduction in carbon emissions due to LEDs in India. Now I think India can take credit for the savings in the whole world because we brought the cost down by 85%, made it a household product, and now possibly one will have to go to an antique store to find an incandescent bulb. But who could have imagined in such a short span of time, India could have converted the entire country to LED at an attractive business proposition cost, where consumers save huge amount of money. Probably the payback is under 1 year. less than 1 year. Both for businesses, it may be 3 or 4 months. For households, about a year. Similarly, another big area where we have an interest, which we have to work with all the other countries, is the food security area. India has done very well in that and can help other parts of the world. May not be the G20 developed world, but then there are other parts of the world where food security can be supported through India's initiatives. My own sense is that the fact that the Sustainable Development Goals, which are expected to be done by 2030, India is not taking a long time frame to achieve that. Starting 2014, we picked up one SDG and literally saturated it in the whole country, be it energy access for all, be it clean energy through our cooking gas program, be it Jan Dhan accounts, by which now financial inclusion is a given. Every household had an account by 2015. Now we are almost coming to a stage where every adult has an account in the country. He's connected to the bank, where people had imagined that this will take 15 years to happen. We did it in a few months. The household account was done in 4 months, where the Prime Minister was personally monitoring at his level. It's a shining example of what leadership and vision can do. And therefore, India has a lot to offer to the rest of the world. Digital technologies, our fintech, our edtech, our healthcare services and pharma, beacon of light for the world in the future. So I can go on and on, Dr. Deepak.
Can I abuse my position of having the mic to ask you another question, which is that how can Indian think tanks be able to help you in your negotiation and discussion in G20? We know there's a lot of discussion going on, but how can we be more productive and be helpful to you?
I think you picked it out of my mind, out of my heart. You can play the most important role, you and other like-minded think tanks, because you have huge institutional memory, having been engaged with the subject for long. Other stakeholders come and go. So I would like rather to create a body of knowledge which continues to have this institutional memory for years to come and decades to come, not only for G20, but for all our international engagements. And the more we engage with all stakeholders, particularly from the private sector, from businesses, social organizations, well-meaning economists and thinkers, I think we'll be able to do a better job. We'll be able to do our job smarter. So I would urge ICRIER to take a leadership role, collect other like-minded organizations who can then dedicate some resources, and I don't mean money, I mean human resources and knowledge resources, and we can try and institutionalize this mechanism when we negotiate FTA, when we negotiate a comprehensive economic partnership, when we are drawing up, for example, the entire PLI scheme came out of huge public engagement and stakeholder consultation in a committee led by the private sector. The scale committee, entirely led by the private sector, where government was a facilitator. I think you know what's best for India when we are doing an FTA or a CEPA. So I would urge you to play an important role, collect other like-minded, well-meaning, nationalist, India-centric organizations, and let's try and build up a team to support these endeavors.
If I may.
Yes, please. And I just want to thank the Minister for there's a music to our ears. We have been thinking about it and we are working on it, sir. And we'll be reaching out to you with a lot of these ideas. Thank you very much.
Deepak ji, reach out to me tomorrow itself so that we can start working on it on a fast track. Seriously.
Absolutely.
We would be delighted, Piyush, because ICRIER has held these conferences for a long time. In fact, Rajiv Kumarji, who was earlier speaking, who's the vice chairman of Niti Aayog, was our director as well for many, many years. So we have a very historic connection with the G20 conferences, particularly, and the kind of research that we are doing in this area. We hope we can really bring it to you, and absolutely, we would be in touch directly. If I may move to another topic, which to me has always been interesting, in the healthcare area, Piyush, we've been looking at what India is doing in the digital stack with the digital healthcare systems. These are again path-breaking systems for everybody, and the impact that they can have on our healthcare can be profound. While we can digitize a substantial portion of healthcare, there also remain all the other supply chain issues across the world, frankly, which we have all discovered during COVID. The issues of pharmacy, the issues of medicine, the issues of trials, the issues of testing. To what extent in the G20 framework and discussions will this play a prominent role, and how do you think we could position ourselves to be a leader in this area? Because this is an industry where India can take world leadership. I have always believed that, and somehow we have not done that yet, and therefore how can we do that in the future?
Pramodji, I do hope that other parts of the world will recognize the strengths that India has shown during this period, also will recognize the fact that they can trust India not to let anybody down when at the very critical juncture. And thirdly, a lot of countries are becoming conscious of healthcare costs now, particularly with the budgets going out of control and large expenditure on healthcare worldwide, both private and public. I think more and more countries are recognizing that. Honorable External Affairs Minister mentioned to me only yesterday that one of my bilaterals in my forthcoming visit for the G20 trade ministers meeting with a particular country, I'm not naming it, is going to be focused only on their desire to get Indian generic medicines and healthcare systems in their country to bring down healthcare costs. And that was music to my ears as Commerce and Industry Minister also. So I think there's a lot of interest in India's healthcare potential to serve. We are not looking at it only from the business perspective. It truly gives us a chance to serve the world.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what friends are for.
Absolutely. And particularly for developing world where vaccination and medicine are so scarcely available, we can be the feeder. Deepak, may I turn back to you? If you have time, Piyush, for some more questions.
One or two. I had a meeting also at 6. I'm running behind schedule all through.
In fact, we have a closing remarks by Peter, so perhaps we don't want to hold ministers back.
Let's do that.
But I must say, I read your list of participants. Absolutely impressive. Very, very impressive. And I would love to engage more with your organization, with all these participants that you have listed out, and learn or get their wise counsel. Whoever can also contribute through written documents, crisp, brief documents with their ideas on what role India can play, what should be our focus areas. I'll really personally welcome it.
That'd be wonderful. That way, music to our ears. We will be delighted. And I think ICRIER is known for its quality of research and its quality of members, and we'll bring that to you. I want to thank you also, G. I cannot tell you how much we can express that you found time for this. But with that, we'll turn it to Peter for his vote of thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Minister, dear ladies and gentlemen, friends. It is indeed a pleasure for me to deliver my vote of thanks at such an important, timely, and relevant international conference. The first thing I have learned today is that what global crisis and high-level meetings have in common. They are hard to predict. So let me begin by expressing how pleased I am that we, our long-standing partner ICRIER, and the Konrad Adenauer Foundation are once again able to organize another pivotal event together with IMF and the ADB Institute. Such close cooperation is evidenced by our 4 organizations in shaping ICRIER